Okay, guys, so I'm going to go over the DBQ, my thoughts on it now that you've all written it. And of course, in general, I'll be going through your feedback or going through and giving you feedback this weekend and letting you see my thoughts. So, first off, let's just kind of look at this since this is your last big one officially before exam date. So, the prompt itself is evaluate the relative significance of the causes and consequences of United States expansion from 1800 to 1905. Now, first off, if you notice, 1800 to 1905 really spans 2 units. That's the start of the Jeffersonian era. So, really, what you're looking at all the way up to just before World War I, really American imperialism, the Spanish-American War. So, that's really two, I mean, technically almost three in a way with 4, 5, and 6. So, what I really like about this prompt is that it gives you so much to talk about. Now, that might be really disconcerting for a lot of you because it's so broad, but I think this is what they're going to do on your exam next Friday. Because they only give you one question, they're going to make it span 2 to 3 units. Usually a DBQ only spans like 1 unit. So I think that's going to give students as much of an opportunity as possible to like share their knowledge. And that way, if it's the 1 unit you didn't know that well, you actually have really 2 or 3 to talk about. So keep that in mind as you prepare for this. So when you think causes and consequences of United States expansion, all right, so the first thing you're thinking about is in that 1800 to 1905, that basically they're giving you the 19th century. So you're thinking expansion west, right? So you're immediately going, manifest destiny. 1800, 1803, that's Louisiana Purchase. And we know that we continue to gain territory through like Mexican-American War and other treaties and things like that, right? So definitely you're thinking of expansion across continental United States. And then hopefully this time frame also helps you think about, we've got Spanish-American War in 1898, and that's when the United States looks outside of its continental borders and we start going international in terms of our expansion. Causes, consequences. So causes, you think about why are we going out there? What obviously land, economic growth as a result of that. And then when you think about consequences, what does that have on consequences of the American psyche? And then especially, what about the people that were already there? And some of these documents really kind of point you to that. Okay, looking at the first document. So you got Alexander Hamilton talking about the purchase of Louisiana. When you look at Alexander Hamilton here, first off, remember Hamilton and Jefferson were bitter rivals. So this is a really interesting document where Hamilton talks about Thomas Jefferson and acknowledges that he kind of did okay, but that he just really lucked into this. He said this purchase will make it necessary or probably make it seem like Mr. Jefferson is brilliant. He said any man, however, who possesses any amount of intelligence will see that the purchase is a result of lucky coincidences and unexpected circumstances. A.K.A. Hamilton says, whatever, Jefferson lucked into this. It's not really his own doing. So for that document here, when you're looking at this, talk about the author's point of view. That's Alexander Hamilton speaking about the work of one of his most bitter rivals. So that's how you could talk about his point of view and why he's saying this like it. He's not a Jeffersonian supporter. So some things to keep in mind there. So he looks as he says, as we go vast region west of Mississippi, it's wilderness with numerous tribes. Consider that present territory is not under occupation. Possibility is going to be a place of actual settlement unlikely. So he says we settle it. It's going to weaken our country and government. It's probably going to be a problem. But he does talk about that it opens valuable markets. So Hamilton is saying, yes, it could provide valuable markets. We probably aren't going to settle it. If we do settle it, it's going to promote problems, and there's already people out there, all those native tribes. All right, the second document, you're looking at basically the Indian Removal Act. So when you see this time, 1830, and it says Indians, it says removal, it says those key words, you need to be thinking, all right, what presidency era this is? This is that Andrew Jackson, and then following up into his successor. Why can't I think of the little magician guy's name? Jackson. Van Buren, thank you. So Jackson and the Van Buren timeframe were actually kicking natives out. A lot of you guys talked about Indian Removal Act. That's what this really is. But then you need to talk about what happens. Trail of Tears as a result of this is big. That shows historical context of the situation. So that's really what that document is aimed at. So you can use that in an argument talking about the consequences. The consequences are we are kicking all these people off their land that they traditionally had out west. Okay, document 3 here. You should be very familiar with this image. This image, as we know, American progress. It symbolizes manifest destiny. If you don't think manifest destiny when you see this, we are way off. All right, so you got to keep that in mind. So when you look at document 3, there's keywords manifest destiny. When you think manifest destiny, think Polk as president. And Polk, during his presidency, we have Mexican-American War. That's in 1848. Or ends in 1848. And that's where you're looking at the expansion of the United States into the American Southwest. What do we get as a result of the Mexican-American War? California, settling Texas disputes, Arizona, New Mexico. So that Southwest strip, that's the almost fulfillment in some ways of American idea of manifest destiny. So when you're thinking of this, also note how this image shows natives fleeing. You can use that in your argument about consequences, right? And then you've also got, the expansion of railroads. You've got this frontier life. So, there's a lot of different things that you could speak on into the purpose of this piece, glorifying the American experience and justifying why we should be going west. Yeah, keep that in mind also, justification. A lot of it we consider divine providence or God-given right for Americans to expand. Some people have mentioned the term social Darwinism, which I think is applicable in that time frame as well. And social Darwinism also applies to your next document, document 4. So this is in 1898, turn of the century. It talks about Americans, how we're going to govern these new possessions. If England can govern foreign land, so can America. If Germany can govern foreign land, so can America. So your wheels need to be turning. Okay, we're not going across the United States. We're going outside of the United States. Spanish-American War. They mentioned Cuba here. That should be another trigger. That's how the United States gets Cuba as a territory. This is how we end up with the Philippines and the whole question involving whether or not we should even have ownership of the Philippines halfway across the world and a foothold in Asia. So this whole thing, this document here is basically spreading the idea that, yes, we should do that. Sorry, my door just closed because of the breeze. That was freaky. The idea here is that we should support the idea of American expansion overseas, that other Europeans are doing it. You could use that social Darwinism piece. We're God's chosen. He actually uses that there. So extension of manifest destiny. Manifest destiny is usually just continental United States, but you can make that extension there. I think that's fine. So in this document, in terms of historical situation, a great way to do document analysis here, historical situation. This is all about the Spanish-American War. Now, that's how you talk about it. They don't mention Spain in any way, shape, or form. So you show the knowledge that you understand this is all about Spain, which I think is a way for you to really understand the context of this document. All right, your last document, obviously you see Teddy Roosevelt pictured there. Should be comfortable with what he looks like with his little sweet monocle. Maybe that's a second glass. You can't really tell. Either way, 1905, it literally shows you Panama Canal. So obviously this is showcasing that Teddy Roosevelt's going to get the job done. It's basically him kicking out anyone in his way, which was more or less Colombia, the whole government. And then in place, he's able to reinforce American imperialism. So our causes could be economic expansion, okay, because we could use that Panama Canal then to get more goods. You could think causes now as military necessity. If we're going to have overseas empires, our Navy needs a shortcut to get between North and South America through Panama. Consequences. Here you want to look at the effects we're going to have on our relations with other countries as a result of Spanish-American War. Europe looks at us as a potential threat now, but then you also have to keep in mind that South America is now going to be a lot more nervous based on what we're doing here because America gets so much more aggressive abroad. And this kind of encapsulates American imperialism outside of the United States. So, and just some other general thoughts about this topic. Contextualization, as you're leading into it, you're talking about 1800. So you want to think early American Republic. So if I'm in the beginning of this essay, I might contextualize looking at the idea of, well, first off, where have we expanded so far? So after American independence, we have our traditional 13 colonies in 1776. But what do we get from the American Revolution in general? Excuse me, well, by the end of all of it. 1776 is the year I've given you, but whatever. What do we get? Northwest Ordinance. Remember, we have levels of expansion. All right, we start with that Northwest Territory, which you think Ohio and Minnesota, whatever, those kinds of areas, right? And then we settle that, how to settle that by Northwest Ordinance. So that's the context leading up to American expansion. And then by 1800, you have that question of Louisiana Purchase, where we double the size of the United States. Now, they don't really key in on this. So some outside evidence that you maybe could talk about is when we think causes and consequences of American expansion, on the continent itself, that 1800 to 1865, it doesn't mention slavery in any of these documents. However, with Louisiana especially, or maybe the Indian Removal or Document 3 Acts, you could talk about how that all this new land also brings up the opportunity about slavery. That might be some outside information that you can key in on as well as another consequence of some people have mentioned growing sectionalism in this. So those are just some thoughts for you guys about this DBQ. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'll do my best to get you your feedback ASAP. And then we can finalize everything next week and make sure you're ready to go. All right, talk to you soon.